Right now, a number of helicopter emergency rescue teams have just landed.
Deadly collapse occurred in a wood-frame stucco building.
Fire in a month. 2,000 people have been forced to evacuate.
Major streets into raging rivers.
Most Californians think a disaster will never happen to them. And then before you know it, you've lost your home or part of it. Now, if this has happened to you, you've already been through quite a bit. And you're probably anxious to rebuild and wondering how the whole process works. There are many steps involved, any one of which can go wrong and cost you precious time and money. In this program, we'll walk you through the entire rebuilding process. Now, it takes a lot of patience and persistence, but you can do it. So, grab a paper and pencil and join us. Let's get ready to rebuild.
A wildfire swept through the area, and we were told to evacuate, so we grabbed as much as we could and put in the car.
Yeah, but then the embers got into the attic.
Meet Carl and Kelly Billings. They recently lost their home of 16 years to a natural disaster. But now you're ready to build back up. So let's get organized. And what helps with that right off the bat is a file folder to keep all your paperwork.
I have one right here. Labels too.
Perfect. The other thing that would really help is if you guys can split up some of your duties. Someone might want to take the financial side of this and organize the checks and what's been paid, that type of paperwork, while the other person takes on the role of communicator, checking out some of the materials and some of the finishing touches. This way, the contractor knows who the go-to person is for each side of it. Any contractor will tell you that clients always want three things. They want perfect quality for the least amount of money and have it finished as soon as possible. It's okay to want the best for your project. But remember, the reality is you're going to need to give a little bit here and there. At the beginning of your project, you'll be gathering a lot of information. You'll need to have an accurate evaluation and estimate from a qualified state licensed contractor. You're also going to be discussing this information with your insurance company. So look to your contractor for the most current information on the cost of construction and replacement items. New code requirements such as efficiency standards for heating and air systems will be part of that equation. You'll also want to find out from the county or city building department if there are special exceptions due to natural disasters.
Well, one thing I was wondering about is the mess.
Well, unfortunately with natural disaster comes a lot of debris and demolition and cleanup. And your city and county building departments are going to have certain requirements for getting rid of this. However, if there's been a lot of damage in one neighborhood, the local officials may help coordinate these efforts. But check, oftentimes there's fees, and in the case of natural disaster, these may be waived. One of the first decisions that's going to be made is what type of project you have, and everybody's going to want to know this. The building department, the insurance agent, even the contractor. The two main types are the complete rebuild, which is obviously new construction from the ground up. The other one is a partial rebuild or home improvement. That's if your chimney's still standing, a couple of walls, or even part of your foundation. And I hope it's that because they typically cost less. While you may think you only have a partial rebuild, let your contractor determine it for sure. So let's start talking about some of the fun things like ideas for your home. There's a ton of areas to look. Internet, magazines, home shows, decorator shows, even just driving around. A couple of things to keep in mind when you're out shopping. First off, you're going to want to keep control of your cost estimates. You're going to want to pick out something that you really, really like, but also have a backup. So let's talk money. Have you contacted the insurance company yet?
Yeah, I heard it was important to file a claim as soon as possible.
Absolutely, but don't accept the final settlement before the full extent of the damage is determined.
The agent said that we could keep the claim open during the project to amend if necessary.
And you can. Keep in mind, some of these calculations can be hard to understand, and you should ask the agent to explain where they came up with the reimbursement amount. So, you have some starter money.
I've got the reimbursement check right here.
And we should put that in a safe place. One of those is called a construction escrow account at your local bank. Now it has two unique characteristics to this account. One, it requires multiple signatures for project payment. And the other one is that the lender has to verify that the work is done before the payment is released. It keeps everything square. So who wants to go to the bank? So tell me, what was it like dealing with the insurance company?
It was pretty confusing.
A lot of people feel that way. Consider hiring a licensed independent insurance adjuster. It's an added expense, but it helps reduce the risk of mistakes. Also, an adjuster might have important information about grants and loans available for federal or state disaster areas. Well, here we are. You guys ready to set up this escrow account?
Sure is.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a moment and recap. First off, remember to document everything. Take photos and good notes, because it'll definitely come in handy in the long run. Stay organized. Have a dedicated folder for all of the documents you're going to accumulate. Be prepared, there will be a lot of them. Debris removal may be one of the first tasks, so check with your local building department about requirements and exceptions made after a natural disaster. Keep in mind, if there's still a foundation, chimney, or wall, you've got a partial rebuild. If nothing is left, well, then you've got a new construction project. And this is a contractual distinction that needs to be made before moving forward. File an insurance claim as soon as possible. If you can, leave the claim open during the project and consider hiring a licensed independent adjuster to help you get through this process. Open an escrow account at a bank and use only this account for making the payments. That will be for your protection. Remember, if the government declares a state or federal disaster area, you may be entitled to emergency grants and loans. Well, I can see that you have your architectural plans, or what we call blueprints, so let's see them.
We got lucky. These are a set of the original plans.
Oh, that's going to help. And it may even save you some money. But before you go on with these, you're going to want to verify via your building department that they're up to current codes and regulations. Now, your contractor can help you with that, and he may elicit the help of a licensed architect. Great. Now that we've verified our plans, we can start bringing in the scope of the project. One of the easiest things to start with is your major building materials, whether you guys are going to use composition roof again or tile.
I was thinking about going with a tile.
Well, that brings us back to our plans again. We need to make sure via your contractor that your structure is able to handle the extra weight. So those type of changes need to be talked about with him along the way. It's time to go window shopping. A couple of things to keep in mind. Be sure to gather product numbers and give this information to your contractor, as this will help him prepare an accurate bid. It's also a good time to check for manufacturer rebates for your selections as well. Now remember, changes can be made, but oftentimes they're frustrating, expensive, and sometimes difficult to make. Something that looks good in a catalog may not be as you imagined in your home, so be sure to see the actual materials before they become a permanent part of your home. Look, you guys have already started. That's great. But let's take a minute and talk about some of the materials you may be selecting for the project. When you're looking at appliances or even some of the materials, try to find those that are either energy efficient or possibly even use green materials, because they may be eligible for rebates from your utility company. Also, this is a good time to start noticing some of the brands you're using for suppliers. Look for those with a good reputation and a long-standing history, because if they would ever go out of business, well, that could hurt the project, and it could also cost you guys money. We're going to take a look at getting a general contractor. Now, a general contractor organizes and supervises the entire job for you. They hire and oversee the plumbers, the electricians, the carpenters, so you don't have to. Now, a general contractor makes his money by adding a negotiated percentage on top of the labor and material costs for the project. Theoretically, you could do this yourself, but then you would become what's known as an owner-builder. And that means you must pull all of the building permits, have liability and workers' compensation insurance, and get all the inspections done yourself. If you make a mistake, it could be a costly one, so beware. Getting a general contractor is a wise investment, but what's absolutely critical is that you get one with a valid state contractor's license. That's the law here in California.
Yeah, I always make sure that I have licensed, bonded contractors that work with me.
These licensed pros have proven competence in their trade and business knowledge through being tested by the state. But some have more experience than others. So remember, don't just take the lowest bid, take the responsible one.
Where can we find a general contractor?
Well, like most things, word of mouth is probably the best place to start. Check with your friends and neighbors about satisfied jobs they've had done. Secondly, you can go to the local building association, get lists there, as well as the Builders Exchange. And in today's environment, you can go on the internet and find lists of building contractors in your area.
I remember seeing flyers around the neighborhood.
Well, unfortunately, especially during a natural disaster, a lot of people put up lowest bid, immediately available, those type of flyers. This may not be the time to take the lowest bid. You want to look for the best value. You also want to check around a little bit about the contractor's reputation and make sure that you're getting someone that is not only a quality individual and licensed, but someone that you're comfortable with. As unbelievable as it may seem, when a disaster strikes, it brings out the lowlifes who try to take advantage of people's vulnerability. Now, don't get paranoid about getting ripped off at every transaction, but you do need to be careful. After a disaster, watch out for price gouging. It's illegal. Businesses can't charge more than 10% above normal prices in the region. It's also not unusual for unscrupulous people to go door to door and offer low prices for what they say is surplus material. Don't let their high-pressure tactics force you to make an on-the-spot decision. And always get your materials from a reputable building or construction supplier where items can be typically returned if needed. There's a lot to watch out for, but most importantly, when it comes to contractors, make sure you see a valid license. Also, they're going to have insurance for the job and be bonded. There's two basic types. One being workman's comp, and that's required by the state for each general contractor to cover. And it's just basically what it sounds like. If anyone gets hurt on the job site, it's a way of protecting you and taking care of that worker as well. The second one is recommended. It's called the general liability coverage. And that's in case someone has an accident on the job or backs into your garage door. You may want to call the contractor's agent and find out if their coverage is up to date and what the liability limits are. That's important because if they don't have that documentation or are not insured, you could be liable for it, and there's little that the state could do to help you. Now, it may seem like a lot of documentation. Check credentials and take notes. A license doesn't guarantee that a contractor is reliable, but very few licensed contractors have complaints filed against them. Plus, you have the ability to look up their record to see if they've had any disciplinary actions taken against their license. Before you hire anyone, look them up on the Contractors State License Board website or call their toll-free automated phone line. You can look up contractors by license number, business name, or individuals and employees.
Okay, we've got several contractors that check out so far.
Well, great. Since you have the plans, you're ready to get some bids.
What should we look for in a bid? I mean, besides price.
Well, the more detail, the better. There's less room for misunderstanding and confusion along the way. And it should include the name and license of all the subcontractors you use throughout the project. Also, the materials should be very well laid out regarding brand and type, color, that type of thing, because price and quality can vary quite a bit. You can have a $30 shower head or a $300 shower head.
Can contractors charge for a bid?
Well, yes, they can, and it is legal, provided that you agreed upon that before they make the bid and agreed upon a price. And quite often the accepted bid will just be applied back to the total cost of the project. Once you've gotten your bids, you may notice that prices can vary quite a bit. Quality and experience can vary as well. You only get one chance to rebuild, so hire someone you know is going to do the job right. In addition to checking contractors' references, check their job sites. Visit at least 2 or 3 per contractor. Okay, so let's go over some of the main points we've covered in this chapter. First off, the project starts with architectural plans that your contractor will need to generate a bid and refine the scope of your project. Then start shopping around for materials and take good notes. Be on the lookout for deals like utility company rebates and only buy from reputable building or construction suppliers. Make sure you get a general contractor with a valid state contractor's license and ask to see the license as well as bond and insurance documents. Remember, when choosing contractors, be sure to check their record on the website of the Contractors State License Board. bids, our couple has picked a candidate, and he's given them a contract for consideration. At this point, it's important to remain patient and be a stickler for detail. Now, all of your expectations and all of the contractor's obligations need to be here. The contract should include your project start and completion dates, a payment schedule that pays for work only as it has been completed. The contract should list plan details of your project, specific information on materials, all subcontractors, the stipulation that the contractor will obtain all required building permits. Make certain you aren't listed as owner-builder, as this could make you liable for severe penalties if the contractor doesn't obtain permits or adhere to building codes. The contract should also specify debris removal and cleanup expectations, as well as where materials will be stored. Make sure it's in a secure location. Before signing anything, clarify the amount of the deposit with the contractor. California state law stipulates that the maximum deposit should be $1,000 or 10% of the final contract bid, whichever is less.
I have a question. I know we talked about a tile counter, but is it okay to upgrade to something like granite?
Well, if you want to do that, you're going to need a change order, and remember to share that information with your lender. Keep in mind, rebuilding is a good time to upgrade, but it does add up, so watch your budget. And it's one of the other reasons we want to put 10% aside for a cushion factor for these type of things along the way. Another important legal detail is the lien release form. Now, if your contractor or a subcontractor working on the project doesn't pay his or her employees, subcontractors, or material suppliers, the person or firm who hasn't been paid can place what's called a mechanic's lien on your property until they're paid for their work or materials. The way to avoid this is to have the workers, subcontractors, and suppliers sign a lien release form as the work is done and paid for. Make sure it's in the contract, and make sure to sign the release at each phase.
I have to admit, all of this is really scary. How do I know this is safe to sign?
This is a good time to have an independent expert review your project plans. You can go down to the local builder's exchange office and go into one of their plan check rooms where there's qualified pros that volunteer their time and will review this for you. Remember, double check and get a professional to review these before you sign. We've mentioned a long list of items that your contract should include. You might want to go back and write them down, and remember, don't sign a contract until it's right. After the contract is signed, you and the contractor will both need to sign a change order to make any changes. And remember to set aside about 10% of the budget for these changes. To protect yourself from liens against your property, have your contractor sign lien release forms at the completion of each phase of construction. To make sure your plans are solid, you may want an independent expert to review them at your local builder's exchange office. So Kevin, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Kevin Krogan, and Kelly and Carl have asked me to be their general contractor.
Great. Now, has everyone read and approved the current version of the contract? Okay, great. The secret to a smooth project is communication. So it's important to establish expectations in order to get things done as efficiently as possible.
The important thing you guys to understand is, doesn't matter how carefully we planned, and we've planned pretty carefully, no project ever goes off without a few bumps. What I mean is, expect the unexpected. For example, if we set a completion date for the early part of November, now I wouldn't go rushing and buying plane tickets for your whole family to have Thanksgiving dinner in your new home. You never know what challenges may come up. Bad materials, supply delays, inspections.
How can we minimize the surprises?
I'll be in touch with you throughout each phase of the project and sometimes every day. Plus, I encourage you to visit the site regularly so you can check in with me. That way you'll be able to see if things are shaping up the way you imagine in the blueprints.
Well, I remember reading something about posting our permits on the construction site.
Right. They do need to be in plain sight at all times so that the building inspector can identify the project.
Is there anything else we need to look for on the construction site?
Well, I'm pretty picky, but if the plans are misinterpreted, you guys will catch it pretty quickly if you're out there personally. Now, I know it's not easy to be there all the time, but if you can try to make yourselves available when they're doing inspections, you'll be able to see firsthand if there's any problems.
Now, should we still be taking photographs at the construction site?
Yes, and that way you can see where the wiring and the plumbing are in the walls before they're closed up. And you'll have a visual record of how the job is being done.
Can I pay for the deposit in cash?
Well, you can, but you shouldn't.
Now, you should use your escrow account for that and make sure that all payments go through that so you have a record of it. And also, it's a way for you to check that the payments aren't getting ahead of the work being completed.
What's the deal with the final payment?
Well, you want to wait until you have written approval from the building department and you're happy with the job.
What if we have some disagreements?
Well, and that's why a contract is important. You want to get everything in writing, and that'll help avoid any confusion. First off, if there is a problem, I suggest you go and find Kevin and talk with him and try to work it out.
Now, what if we can't work it out?
That's a good question. If there's an arbitration clause in the contract, we're going to get a neutral party to try to help things out. You can get some of those folks from the CSLB, and it's free. Now, if there is not an arbitration clause, well, you can file a complaint with the CSLB.
And hopefully we won't need any of that. I mean, we have a very detailed contract and an open line of communication.
Oh, excellent. Does everybody feel comfortable signing the contract?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. A few things to remember. First off, try to be present for inspections so you know firsthand about any issues that come up. Don't let payments get ahead of the work, and don't issue the final payment until you're satisfied and you've gotten a written approval from the building department. Now, if you can't work out a disagreement with your contractor, arbitration is a good option, and you may want to have an arbitration clause in your contract for this purpose. Expect the unexpected. There are a lot of moving parts, and occasional delays are common. The key to avoiding surprises, as always, is an open line of communication. Rebuilding after a natural disaster is tough. Take a deep breath, use these guidelines and all of the resources available to you, and you'll get through it just fine.